Oh, to be young again. Who doesn't remember being a crazy, wacky kid and organizing mass mob attacks on businesses and random strangers on site? I mean, besides me and maybe you. 50 young people stormed in Chicago, a Walgreens. They took bottled drinks, they took sandwiches, other items off the shelves as quickly as they can, and then they left. That mob attack was just the latest in a string of other incidences in Chicago we've been telling you about the last few weeks. In Pennsylvania this weekend, a flash mob of about 40 people aged 11 to 19 converged on a Sears store at about 7 p.m. They grabbed sneakers, socks, watches, whatever they could get their hands on, and then left. Thousands in merchandise taken in seconds. The mob was organized on a social networking site. I'm pretty sure Saul Alinsky talked about this in his book. You know, the one that mentions Lucifer as the first rebel? Yeah. He mentioned this as a way of overwhelming the system. You know, you don't want to protest with just one person, but if you can get 50 people to protest, well, then they don't have enough cops. There just wasn't any Facebook when he wrote that. Everywhere in Pennsylvania, these kinds of things are starting to break out. A woman from Pennsylvania, her leg was broken. Several others were injured when a large teen mob of 30 or 40 men and women began assaulting pedestrians on Broad Street in downtown Philadelphia. They heard someone just yell, "Run, run," and the next thing, punches were being thrown. When they ran, the mob chased them down, and they kicked and punched them at will in the middle of the street. And when they fell to the ground, they didn't stop. If it weren't for a few women in the group that suddenly had an attack of conscience that protected this other woman, it would have been much, much worse. In Washington, D.C. this weekend, there was a joyous celebration at a Caribbean festival. Who doesn't make... I mean, when you're listening to Bob Marley, who just doesn't want to do this? Really? I find it amazing that the left calls me and anybody on the right dangerous, yet it is the leftists who are urging the youth to get angry and take to the streets, as teen unemployment now stands at 25%. How's that hope and change working for you? Reminds me of Francis Fox Piven, quote, "So where are the angry crowds and the demonstrations and the sit-ins and the unruly mobs? Oh, Francis, you've worked so hard. You, I think, will see them soon." Oh, you already are. It's almost like they're giving out advice and people in the streets are taking it. If nothing is done, it will get worse. And it will begin to look like Europe. But isn't that the socialist progressive utopia? We need to be more like Europe. This is what's happening in Europe. At some point, it was, I believe, in the 1880s, the elites in this country, along with Woodrow Wilson, decided we needed to be more like Europe and we needed to model them. Well, they've accumulated massive debt. They've had all kinds of red tape. It's impossible to do business there, and now Europe is self-destructing. Italy's youth unemployment rate is now 28.5%. Spain, on top of their 21 overall unemployment, has a youth unemployment of 44%. That's going to work out well. Now the states are forced into making cuts, and people are in the streets. But that sounds totally unlike what's happening here in America. Here in America, we're just chanting, "What does democracy look like?" Well, let me show you what democracy looks like. This is over in Egypt now. Oh, the home of the brave and land of the free. These are police cars that are going down the street over and over again. You compare this democracy with the way our democracy is looking in our streets. Oh, wait a minute, we're not a democracy. That's right, we're a republic. This is what democracy looks like. Know the difference between democracy and a republic. Better yet, know the difference between democracy and freedom. Because freedom can only come when you have responsibility. But that's not where we're headed. That's not where Europe is headed. That's not where the Middle East is headed. That's not where South America is headed, is it? Is anybody talking about responsibility? Except the responsibility that goes to somebody else that is richer than you. Let me go back to Egypt. Watch this. This is what's happening over the weekend.
عايز اقول ان الديمقراطيه فكر ظلامي، مفيش على رؤوسنا بطح، فكر ظلامي رجعي متخلف. الحريات الموجوده في النظام الديمقراطي، حريه المراه، حريه التملك، حريه الشذوذ الجنسي، حريه شخصيه، حريه الراي والتعبير، يكفر بخالق الارض والسماوات، يزني ويزنى به.
Oh. Isn't that horrible? It's just freedom, of course, leads to all crazy things like, you know, women and homosexuals buying a car or a house and going to the bank. That'd be crazy. America. Hello! When are you going to wake up? Maybe it's just me. Good thing this guy is only an Egyptian sheikh that has the ear of a country. And, of course, there's a Muslim Brotherhood, which is completely unlike this guy. The Muslim Brotherhood, they don't even know the word caliphate. Well, I mean, sure they do, but they won't admit that. Most of America didn't even know what a caliphate was until we brought it up on this program, and still, most of this country doesn't know what a caliphate is or was. Better brush up on it. Here's the Muslim Brotherhood's former spokesperson in the West saying this: why shouldn't we have a country called the United States of Islam? I propose that the Arab peoples who demonstrated for the sake of revolution take to the streets with a slogan, the Arab people wants to remove the borders between its countries. That's fantastic. Wait a minute. That's the same thing the socialists are saying here about us with Mexico. They're trying to get rid of the borders. Wait a minute. That's the same thing that George Soros says. His open society, what is it? That's right, it's a borderless world. What are the odds? That's crazy, isn't it? Oh, what's your problem? Oh, why do you hate Arabs so much? Why do you hate everybody who's different than you just so much? These are crazy. Of course, we've got them on videotape. We've got all the proof. That's crazy. Yeah, pay no attention to any of this. George Soros is a philanthropist. He just has an organization that happens to be working with socialists and Islamists to create a region of the world with no borders. I mean, what? Nothing to see here, people. Move on. .org. Move on. Soros, by the way, has come out over the weekend and said that Europe is on the verge of collapse. A leopard never changes his spots. Do you, George? Seems to me we said you would do that. I believe in January we said, uh-oh, look out, because when he comes out and says, there's nothing left, that's usually when that fundamental transformation is right around the corner. By the way, he also said that now is the time to correct the fundamental flaws in the system. His idea, totally out of the box: more centralized power, more taxes, and more control on the banks. What? This is what democracy looks like. Yeah. Vlad the Impaler, is that you? I thought so. There's only 4 ways that this can end. Tonight, I will show them to you. Come on. Oh boy. Hello, America. We have a studio audience tonight. I can't believe how many people actually want to come and watch the last 4 episodes of the show. Thank you for that. We do have only 4 shows left here on the Fox network, and we are grateful for every moment of airtime that we have been given, and I am truly grateful for all of the time that you have spent with us over the last 2 years. Thursday is our last broadcast. I want to stay in touch with you. Will you please go to glennbeck.com and find out the information of where I'll be, how we can remain in touch, and sign up for my free email newsletter. It's imperative that we stay in touch with each other. Last night, I was reading a story on zerohedge.com. I want to give you the basic gist of all of it. The gist is, this whole thing that we've got going on can only end in one of four ways. One, the debt trap. The debt trap. This is, where you just keep spending money and borrowing more money. We're doing that now. You try to spend your way out of it. Two, hyperinflation. Print your way out of it. We're doing a little of that one, too. Here's a unique one you've probably never heard of. Austerity, but in conjunction with actual economic growth. For those of you who are no longer familiar with economic growth, that's when somebody besides the government creates jobs which create something of lasting value. I know, it's so old-fashioned. Nobody's even considering that one, because it means cut the spending, cut the size of government and the red tape, and allow entrepreneurs and actual people to create. Yeah, I know. Free people. Ugh. It's almost like they're monkeys or something. Free people. Oh, I feel like I'm in a Lifetime movie. I can't get clean. I can't get clean. I know. Good thing there's not a lot of free people around anymore. Get out of bed with the giant global corporations would be some people's advice if you wanted to do this one. Whatever. Get out of bed with companies, like GM or GE or GS, George Soros, and get into bed with free people. The little people. Let them create. Let them dream something up. Like one of them is going to come up with a light bulb. Please. Please, wasn't a little person. We know who that was. It was like one of the presidents or something, I'm pretty sure. Also, what you would do on this is you'd keep taxes low. Spending low, red tape low, taxes low, free people up. It would never work. The fourth thing is default. Yeah. A lot of us know what this one is. In fact, a lot of people on the left are encouraging people all over America to try this one on their home loans and stuff. That's when you say, I'm not going to pay for this, and then somebody comes in and takes the stuff that you have. This is kind of like what it'll be like when, China comes to collect. They'll just take the stuff we have. Now, the option that they're pursuing overseas is the third one, austerity. But not with the low taxes and not with the cutting of the red tape. In fact, nobody over there is willing to work anymore. It's like, what? I'm 28 years old. I'm in retirement. It's going to work out well. In Europe, the result has been similar to, if I just came over here, and no, I don't have it. Here, this will probably work. If I just took this, and this is Jackie, and I took this, and I held it over Jackie's face for a while, and I was held it there, and she's like, no. And that's pretty much what it's like, okay? That's Europe. Not going to work out real well. Unless you're in the, let's say, Molotov cocktail manufacturing business, then you in Europe, you got a booming business. No pun intended. Austerity plus higher taxes and more red tape, not good policy. But, lucky for us, that's what our president is doing. He's following that. He even bragged about following the so innovative Spaniards on their green economy. In fact, this, I think, is what Michelle Obama was referring to when she said this the other day.
I think there's so much more work to do. We've really just begun to lay the foundation.
I'm pretty sure, take six. I'm pretty sure these guys laid the foundation. What foundation are you talking about, Michelle? We do still have work to do here in America. We got to get up to 20% unemployment, huh? The Spaniards are beating us. But we'll also be totally green. This is a bizarre trend from the Obama administration, looking at a failed economic system to save our economy. But that's what we do now. We look at somebody who's making it miserable for everybody and we say, wait a minute, how did Romney do that up in Massachusetts? Because I got to get me some of that. That's how we modeled Obamacare after the failure that is Romneycare. I was going to say call me crazy, but everybody in the media has, so it wouldn't be anything new. Call me a thinker. It's crazy. It's off the top of my head. But why wouldn't you try things that are actually working? Hear me out. I know. You're like, Glenn Beck, what are you? Yeah. Obama said he wasn't an ideologue. He was a pragmatist. If that's true, shouldn't he be on the phone with almost anybody in Texas? Wouldn't he just be random dialing numbers in Texas? Hello, Texas here. Yeah, could you tell us what you're doing? Because it seems to be working. Texas right now is creating half the jobs, or darn near half the jobs. Texas job creation, 237,000 jobs. Other 49 states, 259,000. Got it? Now, I'm not a brilliant Harvard pragmatist, smartest president ever. Forget Jefferson. He was a slave owner. Forget about him. No, this guy, he's so smart. He's insisting that we be more like Europeans. Well, the good news is we are. We are racking up the debt. But now they're cloaking it as something new here in America. Why? Now it's the American dream. No, it's the European dream. And it's not working out. May I ask again, why not look to those things that work? Maybe it's because the elites can't possibly learn from anything in those flyover states. You know, all those people with the low-sloping foreheads, Neanderthals. I'm telling you, Lovey, they are. That was David Carr, his quote from the New York Times. He said that this weekend. Low-sloping foreheads, the people in the middle of the country. Oh, that's so nice of you.
Thank you, David.
Now, here's how the elites at MSNBC reacted to a recent speech
given from my favorite governor, Rick Perry. Watch. Here they are, NBC.
This comes, after Perry got a huge response. Now, I watched this. I felt like an alien watching this from the audience.
You felt like an alien?
I did. I felt like an alien.
What do you mean? You know, I think I saw this guy on Broadway.
Now, this is after the clip they played right before this is Perry saying, we have to get back to the entrepreneur. Yeah. No surprise there that they would consider somebody from the middle of the country an alien creature that they can't relate to. They went on to say that, but Texas has a big debt. Yeah. Now, I'm surprised that the folks over at MSNBC would be, acting so concerned about the financial status of a state. Now, I'm no fan of debt, but there has to be a little bit of debt. I mean, maybe not. If you can do it, God bless you. Every state has it. But Forbes magazine has just done a special on debt. And I read, all of the short words in it. They did an interesting analysis of the debt of every state. And they found that Texas has the fourth best overall situation in the entire country, behind Nebraska, New Hampshire, and Utah. Maybe we should look at those states. What are they doing right? The debt MSNBC is so concerned about in Texas is 1/6 of the amount of debt that the state that they're broadcasting from, New York, has. That's true even though New York has some of the highest taxes in America. And Texas has no state income tax, something I've been thinking an awful lot about lately. Well, let's all think about no state income tax for a while. Can you feel the love tonight? Texas has 1/6 of the debt per capita of New York, 1/7 of New Jersey, 1/8 of Massachusetts, 1/9 of Connecticut. Texas also has pension obligations that are less than half of New Jersey and Connecticut, and 1/3 of that huge, enormous state called Rhode Island. Yes, And let's not forget that last month, S&P gave Texas government bonds a AA+ rating. They said the state's economy will likely recover quicker than other states. Texas, by the way, is now the second largest economy, passing, you guessed it, MSNBC, New York. It's one of the 3 biggest gains in economic size of any state in America over the last 50 years. Not to mention from 2008 to 2010, again, the whole job thing, while California was losing 1.2 million jobs. We should be more like California, don't you think? Remember these things. When you hear Barack Obama take credit for all the jobs he created, just remember these things. There was one state run by policies that are in complete disagreement with this president that created a lot of the jobs. I'm going to introduce you to somebody who kind of knows it, but you might feel like an alien. Next. It's one of our last 4 shows here on Fox. On Thursday, it is our final episode. Make sure you join us this week, and thank you for watching. Rick Perry, who is the governor of Texas, joins me now, and we have questions for you, Rick. You say you're creating jobs. Can the government actually create jobs, sir?
Actually, what a government can do can create an environment where those jobs can be created. Government doesn't create any jobs. They can actually run jobs away. Ask the folks in Illinois. Okay, now you don't have a state legislature. How does your state legislature work? Well, it meets every other year for 140 days, which we just finished that about 27 days ago, and they didn't finish all of the business at hand. So hopefully, day after tomorrow, they will have finished up the session and go home and live under the laws that they helped create. By the way, one of those, loser pay, in the continual reform of our legal system will make Texas even more competitive to those people that want to live outside of the fear of frivolous lawsuits.
Who are those alien life forms? Rick, a Time magazine report says that you're just the master at the theater of job poaching from other states. In other words, you're just hurting all of the other states. Actually, that's what our founding fathers had in mind with the 10th Amendment. They said, you guys go out there and compete. Whoever can put the best environment together, the tax structure that you're most comfortable with, a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable, a legal system that doesn't allow for oversuing, and accountable public schools so that there's a skilled workforce, and then let's see where everybody wants to live. And over the last decade, Texas has won that contest pretty much, not even a close second. Yeah, well, I don't know who these founders are of who you speak, but I have to tell you, you're just poaching jobs. Like, for instance, all you're doing is you're saying to people, let's say my business. Probably by the end of the year, I'll have 150 employees. We had 10, I think, a couple of years ago. If I went to you and I said, Rick, on the QT, I'll move my company to Texas, but I need you to give me zero income tax. You see what I'm saying, Rick? And then you'd say, I think we can work with you. See, it's dirty guys like you. Oh, wait a minute. You don't have a state income tax. I have this theory. Right. I have this theory, Rick, that you are going to become. I mean, this is Texas. You are going to become a real problem in America because you are going to be. They're going to say that you are hurting states like California that's already just trying to keep its head above water. You're hurting New York City because people are leaving New York City. All over the country they're leaving to come to Texas. So you're hurting them. You know, it's interesting. The legislature and the Democrat lieutenant governor came to Texas about 6 weeks ago to sit down and just talk about how we'd created this environment for job growth in Texas. And it's really that competition, Glenn, that's going to make America strong again. It's the federal government kind of getting out of our hair, the idea that they're telling us how to educate our children or how to deliver health care or how to, for that matter, clean our air is really nonsense. If you really want to get America back to this vibrant economy, then
respect the 10th Amendment, allow the states to be the laboratories of innovation. I can promise you, when Rick Scott over in Florida or Nikki Haley over in South Carolina, or for that matter, well, I don't know whether Andrew Cuomo would come up with something that I would bring back to the state of Texas, but the fact is, if those governors and their legislatures come up with some great ideas, we're going to go snitch them from each other. We're going to go bring those into our state and try them. It's how our founding fathers actually foresaw the country being competitive. So, you know, Washington just kind of let us come up with the great ideas. You all take care of our military, defend our borders. Oh, wait a minute, that's a problem for them too.
You know, Rick, I mean this sincerely. I know that you're considering possibly running for president of the United States, and I'm consider possibly moving to Texas. I don't know who your lieutenant governor is, but I'm thinking that we're not going to let you leave Texas. I mean, I could run for governor of Texas. I'm just saying.
That's an idea.
It's a really crappy, bad idea. Let me tell you this one. Let me ask you this one.
Talk about creating some alien
Oh,
looks.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd make MSNBC's head explode. It'd be great. The 95-year-old woman on the TSA, let me change topics with you. 95-year-old woman that was frisked at the airport, told that she's dying of cancer, she's in a wheelchair. They told her to take her diaper off, her adult diaper, so she could. It's humiliating. AFL-CIO gets the contract, gets to be able to. They're going to organize the airport workers. You guys in Texas tried to stand against all of this stuff, and they said we'll make sure that no plane ever flies into Texas. How can a state actually fight back?
It's actually interesting. We introduced legislation during the regular session, and then I put it back on the call for this session. And it was the threat of that legislation. Just this last week, TSA has started doing their operations differently. They're responding to the threat of a state, and hopefully other states in the country will stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to allow federal employees to abuse the people in our states, and you know, and there are a host of areas like that when you look at how the federal government is abusing the people of our country.
Are you concerned at all about the organizing of the airport workers by the AFL-CIO, the security, Homeland Security?
Sure. I think anytime you have federal employees being unionized, I have a real problem with that. You don't have to look much further than what we have already, that those federal agencies, those federal employees that are unionized, at the end of the day, it's not in the best interest of the citizens, certainly the citizens who aren't part of that union.
Real quick, Governor Perry, where do you stand on Israel?
As a Christian, I am taught to support Israel, and I do, rather strongly, I might add. I've been going to Israel since 1992. I'm greatly concerned that we have an administration in place today that does not respect the relationship that we've historically had. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. It's one of our greatest friends, a very good trading partner for Texas and for this country. So the message needs to be clear from this country that we may not always agree with what Israel does, but we're going to be standing with her every day.
Governor Perry, thank you very much. Talk to you again.
You're welcome, Glenn. It's good to see you, brother.
Back in just a second. Welcome back to New York. This is one of the last 4 episodes of this program, and we thank you for watching. I invite you to go to glennbeck.com right now and find out how we can stay in touch with each other and where I will be in the coming days and weeks and months. And I invite you to go there now, glennbeck.com. Last episode is this Thursday night. All right. I started paying attention to Ron Paul, I don't know, before the crash. And during the last election, I thought he was nuts on a lot of things. I still think he's wrong on a few things, but I don't think he's nuts. He is, it's taken one of the worst stretches for the economy in American history to get people to finally pay attention to him. He has been ahead on the economy. He has attempted to audit the Fed now 9 times. They operate in complete darkness. We had somebody on, Rick Santorum, on last week, and I asked him, shut down the Fed, and he said, well, I wouldn't. Really? Shut them down. They have no idea what they're doing. It kind of makes you look at things and wondering why we're into regulation about absolutely everything except the Fed. Not that I want to regulate the Fed, I want to get rid of them, but that's a different story. He understands this probably better than anyone else. He is now in Des Moines, Iowa, Republican presidential candidate, Texas Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman, how are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you, Glenn.
I've said that this today is going to end in one of 4 ways, and the one way that it could end is with renewed prosperity, but it would go through austerity. We would have to make the cuts, we would have to keep taxes low, and then we would have to deregulate all of the citizenry, the exact opposite of what everybody in Congress has been doing and the president has been doing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would add one thing, though. In order to get to that point where you start doing the right things, you have to get rid of the mistakes, which is called getting rid of the malinvestment and the debt. An economy doesn't grow when it's overly burdened by debt and the mistakes made previously due to the business cycle. So you have to liquidate that. Then you go to this of having sound money, limited taxes, limited regulations, and we could get back to growth again. The problem is nobody wants to allow the correction to come, and we're prolonging the agony. We're piling on the economy, and that's why we're 3 to 4 years into it already, and there's no signs of strong recovery. So until we do that, you can expect the economy to get much worse.
Do you see any sense in Washington of people cutting the debt? I mean, I know Jim DeMint has come out and said, cut it. He wants don't put the debt, don't raise the debt ceiling. I know you're against raising the debt ceiling. Don't raise the debt ceiling. Let's get serious about debt. With an exception of a few people, do you think anybody's going to do that in Washington?
No, they'll raise the debt limit, whether it's temporary or long-term, but I don't think they're going to go past August and not raise the debt limit. So I think that's going to happen, which will just encourage the spending again. So, but they can't come together on how they want to cut spending because one group thinks that you can't possibly cut a penny from overseas spending, and the other one says you can't cut a penny out of entitlement system. And I just happen to believe you should be able to cut both, and I don't think for a minute it would hurt our national defense. I think, our defense is not strong because we're spread too thin around the world. But to get that agreement is going to be very, very difficult. And for that reason, I predict that we're going to continue downhill. The deficit is going to be the burden that we can't handle, and that we will eventually have a currency destruction because we do rely on the Federal Reserve. As long as the Federal Reserve, I call a facilitator. They claim it's the Congress. They spend too much money and they're forced to do these things. But if the Fed couldn't create money out of thin air to buy Treasury bills, Congress would be forced to do something because interest rates would rise, and that would be very, very harmful. So it would be on the Congress's shoulders to do something. But instead, we keep spending, and the Federal Reserve accommodates, and they say, well, we can't let interest rates go up, so they just print like crazy. It's pretty amazing that it's worked this as well as it has for so long, but it doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And I think that's why people are so upset in this country, because more and more people are starting to realize that this is coming to an end, and it's probably not in the too distant future.
May I ask you one question I haven't been able to figure out? I think the Ford Foundation and the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation have done more damage to this country than I think a lot of people combined. The money that they had at the time that they just poured into all of these things came from a system of no income tax where the rich were getting richer. Vanderbilt was the same way. They did a lot of great things, and there were people like Carnegie who was absolutely fantastic. Without a virtuous and moral people, which our founders said we had to be or the system wouldn't work, without a virtuous and moral people and no regulation, is there any way to stop capitalism from just being god-awful ugly?
Well, I don't like to think of capitalism as being ugly, but I think what you're talking about is the consequence we have.
Wait. Here's exactly what I mean, and maybe you can answer directly. What I mean is what de Tocqueville talked about, that there would be people that would become so rich that they would kick the doors closed for others. Soros is doing it now. He's kicking the door closed for other people. When these people like Rockefeller got so wealthy, that's what they did. Is there any regulation on that?
Well, I think some did and some did not. Now, Carnegie gave him a lot of his money back, and I don't think Bill Gates as a monster, and I don't think of Warren Buffett as a monster. So it has to do with the morality. Yes, that's the part I agree with you, the morality of these people. But even if there were no income taxes and they got very, very wealthy, if they didn't cheat, if they didn't get benefits from the government, being very, very wealthy, there's nothing wrong with that. But if they get very, very wealthy because they get contracts from the government, or they get low loans from the Federal Reserve, and the banks get bailed out, and they do all the gambling, and they're the ones who get the bailouts, and the little people lose their homes and their jobs, then it's a rotten system. But I don't call that capitalism. I call that cronyism, or lending itself toward fascism. So that to me is a lot different than free market capitalism. I like to use the word free markets because capitalism, people get a little bit confused on that and think it is, some people have painted it as a very bad term. So I want free markets. I don't want the government giving any favors. Under those conditions, the consumer becomes the dominant force. They determine everything, what the prices should be, what the wages should be, and what the products should be, and who survives and who doesn't, not the government.
Okay, real quick, because I've only got 30 seconds. Where do you stand on Israel, sir?
Well, I stand with Israel like I stand with all countries. I think we should be friends with all countries. I think that we should always aim to have everybody as our best friend, like we have Canada. We trade with them. We travel back and forth. We don't give them money. We don't promise them anything, and we do quite well. So I think that if you teach countries to be dependent on us, that they become dependent economically or even militarily, it does them harm. Because why worry about Israel right now because of what's happened in the Middle East and us going bankrupt?
Gotcha. My apologies to Congressman Paul. We had to cut him off because of the network break. But we want to move on to one of the worst floods in one of our cities' history here in America. Did you even know it was happening now? The Soares River near Minot, North Dakota, crested today at a record 1,561 feet above sea level, marking the worst flooding in 40 years. Have you been hearing where's FEMA? Where's the FEMA truck? I haven't heard that. I don't remember hearing that in Joplin either. Where's FEMA? Where's the president? Instead, after 11,000 people were evacuated from their neighborhoods closest to the river, shelters were set up at Minot State and other locations, and they have taken in only a few hundred people. Why? Well, because the other 10,000 or so have been taken into the homes of their families and their friends and their neighbors. For the rest of the country, that's kind of mind-boggling. But that's how we are in North Dakota, said Senator John Hune. Now, I don't know if you realize this, but that's the way we're supposed to be. A Facebook page called Minot ND Flood Help has been set up, gathering postings from hundreds of volunteers looking just to do good. The community is mobilized to help itself, neighbor helping neighbor. This is not the collective salvation or social justice nonsense preached by the left. This is what was taught by Jesus. Help each other. Don't ask the government to do it for you. Beyond that, this is how we're going to save our nation. There is a great article on a website of a friend of mine that I want you to read today, James Robison. You can find his website, James Robison. It's right there. It's right at the bottom of your screen. The article is titled, What, Not Who. Here's just a sample. Already many candidates and major media are moving full swing into next year's elections. We must first understand what must be done before we can identify who can be the best help to do it. Christians, pastors, and church leaders must totally reject the lie that separation of church and state means people of faith remain silent, uninformed, and uninvolved. Those who recognize truth and stand for it can turn the tide. Our nation's founders knew the limits of the Constitution were placed on the government, not the people or religion. The right to stand up and support first principles is both a privilege and a responsibility. True freedom grants citizens the right to choose, and we have a responsibility to choose right. We choose to stand. We choose to help. We make the difference, not the government. The left is using the insidious lie that big government is what Christianity is all about and what our faith is about. It is not. Big government is not about what America is all about. Nothing could be further from that truth. We'll be talking much more about this as we finish up our last, now 3 shows in 10 minutes here on Fox. But this is not the end. It is only the beginning. We have some special things coming for you, so make sure you stay in touch. Go to glennbeck.com and find out how. Back with just a couple of questions from our audience in a minute. I just want to do this is one of the last 3 audiences that we'll have here at Fox, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes taking questions on anything. Yeah, your name is Randy.
Randy. Restoring courage in reference to Americans. If you had to pick one word, what courage do they need to restore?
Well, it's a hyphenated word. Self-reliance. You need to believe in yourself. That you make the difference. And know why. Yeah, somebody gave me some great advice once when I was actually 16 and I just got into radio. And he said, fools break the rules. He said, however, once you truly understand why the rules are created, then you can break them. And then it puts you in a different category if you know why you're breaking the rules. Just to be rebellious, just to say, I'm self-reliant, and you don't really mean it because you don't really even understand what that means, you're a fool. We have to have the courage to look at ourselves and say, where am I not self-reliant? What am I not doing? What do I not know? How many people learned about history, stuff you never knew, because I did in the last 2 years, stuff I never dreamt I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. So we have to become self-reliant in all ways. And that takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage. Sandy.
I send out CDs, DVDs.
Hang on, go ahead.
I send out CDs, DVDs to people, emails. I send them your web all the time.
Yep.
Got prayer groups going. We're praying for our country. Be like, there's something else I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, it's like
that's up for you to figure out what that is, but I mean, you just don't give up. That's the thing. People get frustrated right before you win. The guy who's Joshua Charles, he wrote a book with me, Original Argument. #1 New York Times bestseller this week. Coincidence? You decide. The week that CNN comes out with Fareed Zakaria that says the Constitution should be rewritten, and Time magazine comes out and says the Constitution isn't even relevant anymore, we come out with a book, and it's the #1 New York Times bestseller on the original argument. What was the Federalist argument all about for the Constitution? I think that's divine providence myself. But he almost gave up. He came this close to giving up, trying to get that manuscript to me. Just before you win, you give up. Don't give up. That's the key that we all have to do, because we're, just before Washington crossed the Delaware, they were going to turn and run, but it was Thomas Paine who wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls," because the whole country, Congress had already fled. They were ready to run and cave, and they didn't. He crossed the Delaware. He beats the Hessians, and the rest is America. Back in a second. On tomorrow's program, we're going to spend a little more time on this. This is one of our, Jack, what is it, 3 shows left starting tomorrow? Yep, 3 shows left starting tomorrow. You change that for me, Jack? And so I want to just spend a little bit more time on this because the evidence is overwhelming that what people said was crazy is happening. And what does it mean to you? 3 shows left. Final episode is on Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow, same time. From New York, good night, America.